I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Machiavelli's Prince. Today we are looking at chapter 6 of the Prince, which deals with the new prince, right? The question of the new prince. The title is "Of New Principates, which by one's own arms and virtue are acquired." So therefore, these are the new principates that are acquired, which are wholly new, by one owns arms and virtue. Okay, so this is the big thing Machiavelli will talk about: the question of whether something is your own versus you get it for someone else, right? And I think this starts the question. This idea here is that this new principate that you're getting is because of your equipment, your arms. You did it by yourself. You're not depending on anyone else to do it, and your excellence, your skill. So let's look at this. What he says here. No one should marvel at my speaking of wholly new principates, those in which the prince and the state are alike new. I shall bring forward the greatest examples. Why? Because he's going to go. There's nothing new about this. This is both the prince and the state are new, right? Founders in the sense. These are the creation of the legendary founders, right? He goes. I'm gonna bring forth great examples. Since men always walk, as it were, in the ways beaten by others, and proceed in their own actions by imitation, being unable to keep wholly to the ways of being be, be, being unable to keep wholly to the ways of others, and unable to measure up to the virtue of those whom you imitate. Now, you here, I think, is. Let's go look at you here, because this is, again, Machiavelli's use, right? Um, Yeah, two in me. All translations consulted, but one translation thus phrased as if it were the third person, singular person. This shift towards the third to the second person sounds familiar also. Okay, so therefore this is a familiar. This the third person here, the you, to those whom you imitate. Again, this is personal. This is familiar. In other words, you're not gonna. In other words, it's unable to keep up wholly to the ways of others, and unable to measure up to the virtue of those whom you imitate. A prudent man ought always enter into the ways beaten by great men, and imitate those who have been most excellent, so that if your virtue does not reach up there, at least it gives some odor of it. Semicolon. Okay, again, this is a huge sentence, long sentence, and to do so, and to do as prudent archers, the archers do, who, when the target they propose to strike appears very far off, and knowing nicely how the virtue of their bow can do, the virtue of the bow is their strength of their bow, and what is the possibility of it, they place their aim much higher than the intended target, not to reach such a height with their arrows, but so they may, by aid of so high an aim, attain their purpose. So he ends it with a metaphor, the metaphor of the archer. And what is it? The idea here is that you're going to imitate the great men. You're going to imitate the great men. And okay, and it's going to be. And first he says most people do monkey see, monkey do. I'm sorry. His first thing is, uh, in other words, most since men always walk, as it were, by the ways beaten by others, and proceed in their actions by imitation. Monkey see, monkey do. Okay, monkey see, monkey do. I'm sorry. And what happens now? However, but he says, you're never going to be totally able to keep up to the best. In other words, you're never going to be able to compete up. You're never going to have that same virtue. He says what? He says, and unable to measure up to the virtue of those whom you imitate. In other words, you may not have the capacity to have you reach up to their imitation. But what you should do? A prudent man always enters in way. In other words, it's a prudent man should always take the path of the great men and imitate those who have been most excellent. Why? Because even if your virtue doesn't reach up there, now use the term odor, the odor of it, the smell of it. It looks like its appearance. It has the flavor of it. It has the it has the appearance of it to a certain degree. It's it's imitating it, not perfect, and it isn't it, but it's you it is right, the odor of it. Why? And then we should do what he says. He gives the example. Why should you do this? Is like and archers. Now archers, you look at the virtue of your bow. You know your target's far off. You know that it's going straight like this. You're never going to hit it. So you aim like that to get that target, right? So therefore, this is the idea. This is the virtue. In other words, the virtue of the bow. The prudent archer knows how the virtue of the bow and what is possible to achieve what he wants. Therefore, to aim high, he has to aim high. He aims high not to hit up there, but he aims high to hit there. And the example of this is likewise. You aim at these great people, not always to get to the heights that they achieve, but to a height that you want, the thing you want. Next paragraph. I say, then, that the holy new principles, where there is nothing, where there is a new prince, one finds them more or less difficult to keep, according to whether the one who acquired them is more or less virtuous. In other words, now, this is the problem. What is meant by virtue here? See, now sometimes we'll say virtue means being a good person. No, we have the pious, this kind of virtue means very goody two shoes. Right? I'm good. I'm moral. I'm nice. No, but Machiavelli's virtue doesn't mean this in a sense. This is virtue here is more like akin to what the Greeks actually meant. That is excellence. Virtue in the classical sense, arete, you meant that you were the ability to you do the action, whatever action you're dealing with, you're doing it rightly, correctly, perfectly in that sense. You do the right thing in the right way at the right moment in the right degree. In other words, it is literally hitting the target, right? It is. That's why virtue is a mean. It's between excess and deep. In other words, the target is here. You either hit the target, or you either go beyond it, or you go below it, right? You're off, either high or low, right or left. Your excess or defect. This idea, it is an extreme. Hitting the target is an extreme action. You must hit it on the note, and therefore, this is what a virtue is. You have to have virtue. To being, in other words, the holy new principle, and what is meant by virtue is excellence. Has the abilities, know how to do it, remember the word virtue in Greek? No, I mean we normally we don't. Virtue is Latin from the ver, means man, right? There's the virtue here is the manliness of a man in that sense. The Greek virtue arete is not tied to a masculine noun in that sense. Is not to the ender. Whereas ver has a masculine construction in Latin. So there is the Latin, which then Italian is a derivative of the Latin, a vulgarization of the Latin in one sense, right? There is this connotation of the truly manly here, that is, and that's the joke. And what is that? Alan Bloom used to quip. And actually says in his Closing American Mind something Leo Strauss joked, that the whole history of political philosophy, of political thought, can be traced looking at the question of how virtue, which started out as the manliness of a man, to by the 17th, the 18th, 19th century, becomes tied with purity of innocent. Virtue becomes the innocent of a woman, a young woman. Okay, virtue is purity in that sense. So you have this odd trajectory of the meaning of virtue. Today, when we speak of virtue, we think of purity, innocence. But how the Latins and the Romans understood this, virtue was it is a muscular activity of doing the right thing and acting. Okay, and this is what Machiavelli is trying to get to here. So you have to look at this is why it is difficult, and if you don't have virtue, you're not going to be able to hold a new principate, a form to be successful in this engagement. So what is meant by virtue here? What virtues in particular in that sense? So that's we want to look at this. He goes, and because of this event of a private man becoming a prince, presupposes either virtue or fortune. In other words, you have a private person, someone who's not the prince before, a private man who becomes a prince, becomes the ruler. This supposes either, he says, virtue or fortune. It's seen that the one or the other of these things mitigate, in part, many difficulties. Nevertheless, he who stands less on fortune better maintains himself. So, in other words, that's the okay. Ready? So, therefore, there's two things that fortune or virtue. These two things. You achieve this new principate either because of these two, virtue or fortune. Now, and that both of these things mitigate. Other of these things mitigates. In other words, the problems and difficulties, right? In part, many difficulties. So all the difficulties, these two things kind of mitigate those difficulties you have, right? The difficulties of holding a new principate. But one who stands less on fortune better maintains himself. So it's better to be not. It's better to be relying on virtue. And what is virtue? Virtue is one's own. It's yours. It is you. It is mostly yours. Okay, it is mostly dealing with who you are and your character and your abilities and your skills and in that sense. So therefore, he who stands less on fortune better maintains himself. Things are also facilitated if the prince is constrained by his lack of other states to live there personally. So in other words, it's better because he doesn't have other states. He's not constrained by them, and therefore he can live in his new state. So he has to go live there. So that's another thing that it mitigates why it helps him in that sense if he has the skill in that sense. Um, but in order to come to those whom have become princes by their own virtue and not by fortune, I say that the most excellent are Moses, Cyrus, Romulus, Theseus, and the like. Now he says, he gives four, but then it's those similar. The like is a very important, useful here, because it hints at something more, right? The like. The legendary mythical characters of these lives, right? In addition, in other words, and to those who would be included by the phrase and the like, there are indications in chapter Machiavellian chapter 14 that there are certain kinds of men who, like Xenophon, who write about like Cyrus, Moses, and Theseus. One wonders about the relative status of Cyrus, Xenophon to Cyrus, right? Who's being imitated, Cyrus or Xenophon, Cyrus, right? That's even the question. Who is the real imitating thing here that we have to look into this? Who's Cyrus? The real Cyrus or Xenophon Cyrus? Therefore, if it's Xenophon Cyrus, is Xenophon who's another this character. But all these characters, Moses, Cyrus, Romulus, and the like, these are the ones who are the most excellent of these people who form new principates. And although one ought not to reason of Moses, he having been mere executioner of the things that were ordained by God, he ought yet to be admired, if only for the grace which made him worthy to speak with God. In other words, In other words, okay, we shouldn't talk about Moses because Moses really didn't do it. Moses merely was executing God's will. But then again, maybe we should consider Moses because um, uh, 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 that he must have been had some virtue by or some grace or something that makes him worthy of God using him, right, doing it, right, make him worthy to speak with God. But let us consider Cyrus and the others who have acquired or founded kingdoms. Now, again, you here is a courteous second person is used. The second person courteous is formal. It's a little more courteous. It's not intimate. It's not. You will find them all wonderful. So all these guys, we shouldn't talk about Moses, but then if you look at Cyrus and those other ones, you will find them all wonderful. And if their particular actions and orders are considered, they seem not discrepant from those of Moses, who had so great a preceptor. In other words, okay, we shouldn't talk about Moses. Moses didn't do it himself. He's only doing it God. But then let's focus on Cyrus and those others. But if we look at what they do, there's not much difference between what they do, right? In other words, if they're all wonderful, and if their particular actions and orders are considered, look at their actions and their orders, they won't seem they seem not discrepant, not different from those of Moses, who had such a great preceptor, God. Right? So therefore, even if Moses is not is really the intermediate an executor from what is God, then I'm sorry, if you look at what Moses does and comparing to what Cyrus and the others do, they're not much different. Okay, so that's so that they're like Moses, and in examining their actions in their lives, one see that fortune provided them with nothing other than the occasion, which gave them the matter into which they could introduce whatever form they pleased. Without that occasion, the virtue of their mind would have been extinguished, and without the virtue, the occasion would have come in vain. Now, this sentence is very important. In other words, if fortune plays the only role fortune plays here for these virtuous men, these great captains, is the occasion. The occasion that gave them the matter. In other words, they took matter, people. The matter is the people there. And then he applies form to it. That's the purpose of regime founding. You're giving form to the matter. That's the whole nature of the politeia. The politeia, or the regime in the Greek, or the constitution, sometimes translated as, the politeia gives form, the eidos, to the matter. Okay? And this gives the body politics its character, its dimension, its direction, right? So what is interesting here is that the only fortune here is what? The occasion. Now, but the problem is that, it's important because if you have virtue, you have the great, what is the virtue of mind? In other words, what he says here, he says, uh, uh, with without the occasion, the virtue of their minds would have extinguished. In other words, they wouldn't have the chance to do it. They needed the occasion. Oh my God, there's a 1950s song that always comes to my mind. I forget it. I don't remember it. I remember listening to it in the 1990s when I was driving. When I used to back in American and drive to work, and I'd listen to the 1950s station occasionally because it was I couldn't get some other stations, and you could get the 50s music, and you'd hear I would hear this song routinely played from the 50s about it's like it always brought me this line of Machiavelli that this occasion matters. In other words, you can have all the virtue and all the good character, but if you don't have the opportunity to do it, it's meaningless, right? That's the whole point he's saying. But likewise, having the occasion, getting the occasion, but don't not having the virtue or the ability, this is also in vain. In other words, having an occasion, having having the opportunity, but not having the ability to actualize what the occasion provides, is wasting also. So you need what? You need to have the virtue first. Why? To be looking for the occasion. That is the only that is the role of fortune in that sense. Fortune provides them with nothing other than the occasion. This is that lucky in a sense. It was necessary then for Moses to find the people of Israel in Egypt, enslaved and oppressed by the Egyptian, so that they, in their order to escape their servitude, will be disposed to follow him. So the Egyptian Moses' case, the Israelis needed to be enslaved in Egypt, and they would, to escape them, they would follow them. And it was fitting that Romulus not remain in Alba, that he be exposed at birth, so that he might want to become king of Rome and founder of that fatherland. So the example of Romulus, right? He not remain in that city. He gets exposed. He and his brother are exposed, right? And what happens is, they don't mention his brother, but they found a city of vagabonds, right? It was needful that Cyrus find the Persians malcontented with the imperium of the Medes, and the Medes soft and effeminate from a long peace, right? In other words, the Medes were the stronger power. The Persians were malcontented with the power of the Medes. The Medes were soft and women-like, effeminate from their long peace that gave him the occasion. Theseus would not have been unable to demonstrate his virtue if he had not found the Athenians scattered in the countryside. Okay, Theseus, the great founder of Athens, and the legendary founder of Athens. He took these scattered people, and like in many ways, the origins of Athens and the origins of Rome are these stories of a great leader bringing together just random peoples. These occasions, therefore, made these men happy, and their excellent virtue made the occasions known. Hence, their fatherland was ennobled, and they became more happy. Now, fatherland here, this is, okay, patria, right? This is five. La patria. La patria. This is the fatherland. The fatherland is la patria. La patria. The fatherland, of course, is the term that which meaning seems to be connected with the province, right? The province. And in other words, Alvarez has a great line here. I'm going to read it because it's in the text, and I'll just talk about this. He continues, he says, as the patriotic song says, the citizen loves the lands where his father died, its rocks and whales, its woods and tempered hills, right? One notes an intermixing of the natural and the conventional in the words of the song that reflects exactly what we wish to convey about the meaning of Machiavelli, about the meaning Machiavelli appears to attach to the fatherland. The fatherland is the people and the land, right? The people and attachment to the land, right? The province in that sense. The ennobling of one's fatherland is found in the orders which will make it powerful and thus secured and honored. And if powerful, secured, and honored, it cannot then but be happy, right? He says, the Alvarez says. A fatherland would seem to possess the characteristics of the state and the province alike. So it's both, and it is both the state, the civic entity, and the nation, the nation or the province, right? This is why province takes the role in Machiavelli. Province takes the role of nation in that sense, right? It's prior to nation, but it is like nation. A patriotic love is not simply love of land into which one's born. Is not simply, but one also loves a political order. So it's the love of two things. Patriotic love. It's the love of not only of the land, but of the land with the particular political order. So I'm not going to study. I won't continue this further. The Alvarez's note is a long note here, and it's a very good one on fatherland. It's very interesting. The problem of the fatherland. Now, okay. So therefore, These occasions make these men happy. Why? Because their excellent virtue made an occasion known. That is the fatherland, their patria, their land, the petra, their homeland, where it's the people and the province, are ennobled and become most happy. They're autonomous. They have their identity in that sense. They're there. They're free in that sense. They're not say yeah, free in that sense. I think it would have to be free. Why would you want to live in a place that you're unfree? These men and those like them who become princes by virtue, virtuous ways, by virtuous ways. These men and other those like them who become princes by virtuous way acquire the principate with difficulty. It's difficult. They acquire it with difficulty, but they hold it with faculty. I mean, ability, their capacities, right? And the difficulty which they have in acquiring the principate arise in part from the new orders and modes that they are forced to introduce to found their state and security. In other words, here he talks about the problem. The problem is the whole problem of forming new things is you have to impose new orders and modes. You have to force them, that they are forced to introduce and founding their state and security. So the principal difficulty, the principate arises in this sense, is the introduction of the new modes and orders. Okay? Than this. And he says, and one ought to consider that nothing is more difficult to deal with, nor more dubious of success, or more dangerous to manage than making oneself the head in the introduction of new orders. Semicolon, stop here. In other words, why? This is the most difficult. You're going to be the head. You're going to be the person who brings in the new orders. This is the what? He says this is going to be nothing is more difficult to deal with, nor more dubious of success, nor more dangerous to manage than becoming the head of introducing new modes, orders. For the introducer's enemies, the introducer's enemies are all those who have done well by the old orders. And while his defenders are all those who would do well by the new orders, they are lukewarm. So therefore, okay, why? Why is this all difficult? Because they're, the person who's going to bring the new orders are going to be immediately opposed by all those who have done well, who have their interests tied in the old order, who benefited from the old system, the old rules. You don't like them, and this is any change, any political change. The second you bring change, all those who benefited from the old system will immediately oppose you. Why? Because they don't like and who supports you? Those who think they're going to benefit. But those who think those who support the change because they think they're going to benefit, the difference is they're lukewarm, right? Now he talks about this. That lukewarmness arises partly from fear of the adversaries who have the laws on their side. So therefore, you're introducing something new. Therefore, this is the existing order has the laws on their side, right? And they fear that they fear that the laws on their side, and they're not going to change it, right? This is the changing of an order. That the existing order and the rules and the people who have the power are going to use the power to preserve themselves. It's like that end scene in Powerball, where the owner of the Boston Red Sox talks to the A's a manager and trying to hire him over, saying, "Listen, everyone else went batshit crazy with you did that because anytime you do introduce change to the thing, those who fear those people who are benefiting by the old system are going to go absolutely crazy about that. It's great. It's that scene is an important statement. It elaborates what Machiavelli says here about this. But what happens? But those who want the things, in other words, the lukewarmness arises from the fear of those adversaries, right? Partly from the incredulity of men who do not, in truth, believe in the new things until they firmly experience them. Semicolon. In other words, what? The incredulity of men. What are they? That means that they don't have faith. They don't really know. The incredulity is kind of, okay, I like this idea, but I'm not sure yet. What they who in truth, who do not in truth believe in the new things until they experience them, until they taste them and benefit from them, they don't know them, and they're not. And honestly, they doubt. Incongruity is kind of like a lack of faith, and they don't really believe in the thing in that sense, right? Whence it comes to pass, whenever one's enemies has the occasion to attack, they do so with partisanship, and the other's defense is lukewarm. In such a mode, all who are associated with him are endangered, right? That's the danger of it, right? Anyone who's coming with you are going to be introducing a new mode. Anyone who's associated are going to be targeted by the system. They're going to attack. The defenders of the system will attack partisanly with everything. Like, I mean, one thinks of Donald Trump and how all the instruments of the state went against him, right? All the instruments of media, elite, and that went against them. Well, look at Brexit. Look how the same thing. Any kind of change that is challenging a something is going to the established status quo. Those who hold the power of the status quo will oppose it in a sense, right? And anyone who's on their side are endangered. Why? They're targeting them. Try being a Trump lawyer. See how long that lasts. Try. Look. So therefore, just think about that for a second. And it is therefore necessary, if one wants to discuss this part well, to examine whether these innovators stand on their own or if they depend on others. That is to say, whether to conduct their work they need to beg or are truly able to force. In other words, okay, in order to discuss this, what do you have to do? If you're going to talk about this well, you have to examine whether these innovators, are they standing on their own or do they depend on others? Are they doing it on their own or they're depending on others? Do they have to beg or they can truly force? Right? In other words, the innovator is either going to rely on others, beg for assistance, or they're going to have the ability of their own that they're able to compel, to force change. In the first case, they will always come to evil and lead to nothing. If you're relying on others, beg, it's going to not lead well. But when they depend on their own and are able to force, then there is rarely a time that they are in danger. In other words, so therefore it depends whether you have enough means to do it. Are you and not necessarily your supporters, but I mean, the you here might be the group of people with you, and not just merely supporters and allies, but the real people who got skin in your game and believe what the things are you are. Their loyalty to you is inaccessible. They're going to go with you. They're going to die with you. Okay. So it's your ability, and the forces you control and you command, not relying on others, but the things that you have the possession of. If you can have that ability to force and do this, that's rarely endangered. But if you're relying on others to do it, to have other people do it, that's always going to end up bad. They always come to evil and lead to nothing. Whence it comes to pass that all armed prophets conquer, and the unarmed ones are ruined. So this is the main metaphor. The armed prophet. The armed prophet is now, of course, here we think of Moses, Muhammad, but Jesus is unarmed, right? He gets crucified, but does he achieve what he wants to achieve at the end? In that sense, that's the problem. This is why this metaphor is a problematic one in a sense. For in other words, the armed prophets are ruined. Now he will talk about another prophet. He'll talk about that. he'll continue this question because there's an example of his time, Savonarola, right? Savonarola of Florence, the religious leader in Florence, who led the kind of revolutionary moment that helped, establish the republic, and but then he is ultimately undone, and the republic establishes, right? In other words, for in addition to these things said, the nature of the people. So even in addition to this question of having force or not, the nature of the people is variable, and it is easy to persuade them of a thing, but difficult to keep them firm in that persuasion. In other words, okay, what about the people? Okay. You can't rely on the people in that sense. The people, he's going to talk about this. The people, the general people, the people are what? They're what? They're variable. The nature of the people is variable. They changeable. It's easy to persuade them of something, but it's difficult to keep them firm in that persuasion. Therefore, it is needful needful to order things, order affairs, in such a mode that when the people, in other words, when the people do not believe anymore, in other words, it is needful to order affairs in such a mode that when the people do not believe anymore, one is able to make them believe by force. In other words, you compel them. Even if they don't believe anymore, they don't believe. The people don't believe. They're not persuaded, but then you have the force to compel them that. Okay? That you must be, it is therefore it's needful in order to order things that they're no longer, you're not relying them on mere persuasion, but now you're compelling them. Now, how does he compel them, and how you can compel such people? In other words, you put them in a situation where they can't save their own necks. You put them in a situation where, I'm sorry, you don't go continue with, you have to continue with me, or otherwise you're gone. You have nothing. In other words, you put them in a situation where if they fail to follow you, they lose everything. Okay, that's the question. Or you compel them that they fear you now more than the other guy. We'll talk about these things. Now, the next paragraph: Moses, Cyrus, and Theseus and Romulus, had they been unarmed, would have been unable to make them long observe their constitutions. Now, this is the only time we use the word constitutions, right? Their orders. The constitutions is their orders. As in our times happened to Fria Gramilio Savonarola. The famous, this is the thing. Savonarola is the I think Franciscan, or Dominican, or I always confuse this. Is it Dominican or Franciscan? Yeah, he was a Dominican friar who captured Florence with the prophetic sermons and tried to establish Florence as a Christian republic. He ruled Florence Republic with Pirdos O'Donnell from 1494, but became involved in a challenge to prove his prophetic gifts through the ordeal of fire. When the ordeal never came to pass because of bickering delays, the people blamed Savonarola for the failure and turned against him. Opposed by the Franciscans, the Pope, and the followers of the Medici, he was hanged and burned in the Pisa di Sigillore in May 23rd, 1498. So that's the famous, Savonarola's moment in that sense. That whatever happened to them, who was ruined by his new orders, when the multitude began not to believe them. Right, the multitude lost faith, and he had no way to hold firm those who had believed, nor to make the unbelievers believe. Right, that's the whole problem. Right, the real skill is making the non-believers believe. How can you do this? You have to have the ability to make the non-believers believe. And he did not have it because he was unarmed. Therefore, such men as these have great difficulties in the conduct of in other words, therefore, such men as these have great difficulty in the conduct of their enterprise, and all their perils are on the way, and they must with their virtue surmount them. But having surmounted them, and commencing to be held in veneration, having extinguished those who were envious of their qualities. They remain powerful, secure, honored, and happy. So therefore, he continues, the armed prophet who is introducing new modes and orders, he is able to compel the many. And then what happens? And it's all the difficulties are on the way to doing it. And they achieve them with their virtue. With their virtue, they achieve the thing. But having surmounted them and commencing to be held, now once they win, once you've achieved these things, and how great the achievement it was, you become held in veneration. And then you extinguish those who were envious of their qualities, those who were envious, those who want to threaten, they're envious and act against them. You remove, extinguish them. They remain powerful, secure, honored, and happy. Now he wants to bring in a lesson. Now this is the last paragraph here. He's going to. I want a lesser example to such high examples. He's going to bring a lesser example, but it is a good one. If a good one, if it will be taken in the proper proportion to the former. And I want it to suffice for all similar cases. So this is he's going to bring another example, a lower example, but it's going to be like the higher example. And if it's taking, you have to take it in its proper proportions to the former, but it will be similar to all similar cases. And this is of Hero of Syracuse. Now, okay, Hero of Syracuse. Why is this? This is important because Hero II, tyrant of Syracuse, reigned for 54 years. He was forced to conclude a peace with Rome and remain from there on Roman protection. Now, this hero, this is the one Xenophon speaks of also. There's a hero that Xenophon speaks of, Xenophon on tyranny, or the hero, the essay, the hero. Xenophon's dialogue, where it's not Xenophon, it's Simonides the poet and the tyrant hero talk about good tyranny. Now, it's interesting, Cyrus, the knowledge of Cyrus we have is mostly the life of Cyrus, the Cyropaedia is Xenophon. And Hero, the way we know of Hero, particularly the great hero, and the dialogue on tyranny that we have is another Xenophon, it's a dialogue. In other words, two of the documents, examples, another Xenophon encounter. But Xenophon the hero of Syracuse, a tyrant, is now going to be used as an example. Why? That man from a private station, he was a mercenary captain who betrays his city, and uses his mercenaries to seize the city of Syracuse and becomes its ruler. So he, as a man from private station, became a prince of Syracuse. And again, he did not have anything from fortune other than the occasion. For the Syracusing, being oppressed, elected him for their captain, hence the captain of their garrison, right? Whence he gained such merit that he was made their prince. So there was, and he had so much virtue, even in private fortune, that he who wrote of him said, "For that man lacked nothing for ruling but a kingdom." Right? Again, this is 8. The line here is from the Latin. Two references have been given for the quotation. One is the Justin's Compendium of Pontifium of Trojans History, a work which has otherwise been lost, and the other is Polybius's History, Book 1. Right. So Polybius talks about that in that sense. So therefore, but he talks about a person who writes of him. But yes, but who's the other person who writes of him? But it doesn't say this line, but who does nevertheless writes of him in a way is Xenophon again, Xenophon's hero. So therefore, what does this man do? That man extinguished the old militia, ordered the new, left his ancient alliances, made new ones. And as soon as he had allies and soldiers of his own making, he was able to build an edifice on such a foundation, so that he endured much toil in acquiring, and little in maintaining. So, in other words, yes, it was difficult to acquire, but it was very easy once he had it and maintained it. So that it's very interesting. The lesser example of hero he ends on. And that's an interesting one. And it's not necessarily a nice one either, because Tyrant is a betrayer. He betrays his former thing. He is a tyrant, and he is a tyrant. In other words, a tyrant in both the Greek sense, but also he does not. He was elected captain and he betrayed them. So that man, what did he do? He said he extinguished the old militia, ordered a new one, loyal to him, left the ancient alliances, made new ones, and as soon as he had allies and soldiers of his own making, he was able to build anything on the foundation, edifice on that foundation. And that's how he made his arms. And that's why Machiavelli ends with that examination on that. So let's stop here. Any comments or questions, please put them below, and I'll respond to them when I see them, and I'll respond to them and address them and help in any way I can. Another thing you can do is like the video. If you liked it, like it. Hit the like button. Hit the thumbs up button. It helps the algorithm. Share it. Share it on your social media, or share it to your friends. Share it far and wide. Again, all this helps the algorithm in that sense. Another thing you can do is, if you've not subscribed already, please consider subscribing. It helps grows the channel, and again helps the algorithm. Please introduce it. Tell others about the channel. Check it out. To come check out what we do here. Maybe see the other videos and other playlists that we've done about different books. The other thing, now, if you didn't like it, you had something wrong, you thought I did something wrong, or you disagree with something, you can thumbs down, but say why in the comments. This way, people can learn from this. Another thing you can do is, you can want to follow me on social media. You can follow my social media links that are below. And if you want to know more about me as a researcher and a scholar, and check out my research and things like that, you can go check out below the social media, the academic social media links below those. And then next, if you want to help what I do, you want to be a contributor, you want to be a patron or supporter, it always helps. This does take time. I have to take time out of things. I should be writing more than but I'm doing this. This is important. So if you can, if you want to, please, the links to Subscribestar or Patreon, or the URLs below, and you can support directly to that. Or another way you can support is buy one of my books. The links to the books are the list of the published books are below, and you can order any one of them through either your local bookstore, asking them to order it for you if they don't have a copy, which they probably won't have a copy, but who knows. Or an online distributor like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or Libris, or whatever, or directly through the publisher. Well, that's it. Well, we'll turn next time to chapter 7, and we shall hope you have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.